This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Episode 170 for July 19th, 2015. 4 years and running. Today we bring you the story Princesses Don't Breathe Fire by Serena Dory, and narrated by myself and several of my children. But more about that in a little while. Serena Dory is the author of the award-winning YA paranormal romance novel, Silent Moon. Her Puritan and alien love story, Dawn of the Morning Star, is due to come out this year with Wolfsinger Publications. She has sold over 65 short stories to markets like Daily Science Fiction, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, Orson Scott Card's Intergalactic Medicine Show, Cosmos, and Sword and Laser. By day, Serena is a public school art teacher, artist, belly dance performer, and instructor, copy editor, fashion designer, event organizer, and probably a few other things. By night, she writes, as you may imagine, and leaves a little time for sleep. You can find info about her short stories and novels on her website, www.serenadorie.com. That's SARINADORIE.com. This story, Princesses Don't Breathe Fire, was originally published in Flagship Magazine. As a special treat, today we are bringing you a full cast production of Princesses Don't Breathe Fire. I'm going to be your narrator, and several of my children, as I said before, are going to act out the parts. This is a traditional YA story with a princess with some paranormal abilities, so I think it fits in perfectly. Now, sit back and relax. We have a story to tell. Princesses Don't Breathe Fire by Serena Dory. Narrated by Jeff Height. Also, introducing the voices of Elizabeth, Marie, Charles, and Thomas Height. When Princess Draciona was born, it was obvious something wasn't quite right. She had emerald eyes and viridian hair. Most unusual of all was her scaly, moss-tinted skin. "This baby looks like a dragon," said Prince Rapunzelson, named after his great-grandmother. No, insisted his wife, Princess Penelope. "That's just green eczema. She'll grow out of it." Prince Rapunzelson nodded and decided to let his wife worry about it. He would rather be thinking about battle. But Princess Draciona did not grow out of her eczema. To make matters worse, when she started to teethe, she grew sharp, dagger-like fangs. When she didn't get her way, sometimes she breathed fire. "Princesses do not breathe fire just because they don't get their way," said Rapunzelson, who was king by now. Years passed, and Queen Penelope and King Rapunzelson had 3 more children. They all had brown eyes, brown hair, and smooth, creamy skin. They didn't have so much as a patch of eczema. As Draciona grew older, this became more of a problem. The hue of her skin changed from moss to lime green. The court often whispered about her and implied treasonous things about her mother's behavior with dragons before she'd been rescued. No, it's simply an enchantment or a fairy curse," Queen Penelope said. And who were her subjects to argue with her? She was queen, even if her firstborn was a bit scaly. One fine spring day, as Draciona sat in the flower garden, playing dolls with her brother and sisters, the court jester cartwheeled over and made up an annoying song, as he often did to poke fun at people.
"Look at Prince Frederick, what a shame. It makes one sick that he plays a little girl's game."
He poked Draciona's younger brother with his staff and made him cry. Draciona got so angry she gobbled up the jester in one bite.
"I wish I could do that,"
said Prince Frederick as he wiped away tears. "Princesses do not eat jesters just because they don't like their jokes," King Rapunzelson said. Draciona didn't feel bad about it. The gestures meter had been off, and his rhyming wasn't very good. Draciona's problem became more serious as she grew older, for no matter what healer or magician the king and queen sent for, they couldn't find an ointment to clear up her skin condition. When Draciona turned 16, her father made appointments with nobles to court her so she might one day be married. The nobles were so pompous and annoying that Draciona ate a few of them. "Princesses do not eat their suitors," her father warned.
Yes, I know,
Draciona said, smoke fuming from her nose.
Nor do princesses have green hair, green eyes, and breathe fire or have eczema that looks like dragon scales.
"If you don't cease this unprincess-like behavior, I'll lock you in a tower for the rest of your life, or until a knight comes to rescue you and take you off my hands." King Rapunzelson patted her on the head. "Now, go talk to your mother about your behavior. I'm busy planning battle to acquire more lands." In the privacy of her mother's chamber, Draciona cried.
Why am I so different from other girls? Why can't I have brown hair, brown eyes, and creamy skin like my brother and my sisters?
She hated how people looked at her like she was a freak. Worse yet, she dreaded disappointing her parents.
Why can't I be normal?
Queen Penelope stroked her daughter's hair and tried not to get her sleeves singed when her daughter's breath became too fiery. "Because you're not a normal girl."
Father can't stand me, and the court whispers about me and says I'm enchanted by a curse, and...
No, there's no curse. It's a bit more complicated. Queen Penelope cleared her throat. "I think it's time you meet your real father, Frederick the Dreaded Dragon." Frederick? Draciona's younger brother was named after some dragon her mother once had an affair with? Draciona was a princess and had lived a sheltered life in the walls of the castle. She couldn't imagine how a human woman and a giant lizard could have conceived a child, nor did Draciona want to know. "Princesses don't have quests," King Rapunzelson said. All the same, Queen Penelope packed Draciona a small satchel and said goodbye to her daughter. Draciona traveled across the kingdom toward the Mountains of Doom, through the Caves of No Return, and into the home of Frederick the Dreaded. She was stumbling through the darkness of the cavern when she walked into someone.
"Excuse me,"
said the man.
"I mean, who goes there?"
My name is Princess Draciona, daughter of Penelope and King Rapunzel. Actually, my mother says I'm daughter of Frederick the Dreaded of Upper Valdor.
A torch on the wall suddenly exploded with light. A handsome young man with long dark hair wearing chainmail stood before her. Draciona placed her hands on her hips.
And who are you? A knight to slay my father?
"I would never dream of killing dragons, especially not Frederick. I am Rob Greentree, court magician, chief librarian, and official lackey of Frederick the Dreaded, and I happen to be his cousin's wife's sister's nephew, adopted but orphaned son."
A magician? Why are you wearing chainmail?
"I was cleaning the kitchen, and some of the mice are quite ferocious."
As a magician, you must have knowledge of herbs. Do you happen to know of any ointments for clearing up green eczema?
Draciona asked. Rob shook his head.
"No, do you know someone with green eczema?"
Me, of course.
Draciona crossed her arms. The young magician squinted his eyes and peered closely at her.
"You don't have green eczema. You have a mild case of dragon scales."
Is there a cure?
He shrugged.
"Not that I know of."
Well then, you better take me to my father.
Rob led Draciona through dark and winding tunnels before they came to a large room lit by hundreds of sconces. Treasure surrounded a green hill in the center of the cavern. Draciona could now see Rob's hair wasn't black, but bright green. His eyes were the same viridian hue. She could only imagine what King Rapunzelson would say about that. At least Rob didn't have eczema.
"Ahem,"
said Rob.
"A visitor, daughter of Princess Penelope, and, you, apparently."
The green hill shifted and turned. A dragon, the size of her room, turned his big puppy dog eyes away from the book of poetry he was reading. A grin spread across Frederick's face. Despite the rows of sharp teeth, he seemed more cute than menacing. It was difficult to resist the urge to pet his head like one would a favorite dog. Frederick bowed his head. "I'd hoped we'd meet someday." His voice was deep and gravelly, rumbling like thunder. "How is Penelope?" Dracula exchanged polite conversation for a while before explaining.
My mother sent me here because I told her I wished to be a normal girl. But the problem is, I have green, scaly skin.
Is that the only indication of being a dragon?
Well, sometimes I accidentally eat people who annoy me, and I breathe fire at inconvenient times. Also, I seem to be unusually strong. Can you help me become a normal princess?
It sounds like you haven't learned to control the dragon side of yourself. It can be difficult the first 50 years.
His green scales turned pink and smooth, his enormous tail receded, and his muzzle shortened, and he shrank. Within moments, a man with midnight black hair, bright green eyes, dressed in dark green, stood before her. Somehow, he still reminded Draciona of a puppy. Frederick's ability to change shape explained a few things, and from his handsome features, Draciona understood his mother's attraction to him. He said,
"If you can behave as a human, I believe it is possible for you to overcome your dragon side. I will give you a quest to bring out your princess nature. If you can complete it, your dragon scale should clear up, and you can be a normal girl."
Hope bloomed in Draciona's chest at the idea of being normal, and not an embarrassment to her family. That, and she didn't particularly like the idea of being locked in a tower for the rest of her life. Frederick went on.
"But if you fail your quest, the green hue of your skin will worsen, and you will be doomed to spend the rest of your days as a dragon. Are you certain you wish to go on with this quest?"
Draciona swallowed and nodded.
"But first, you must be tired from your journey. I will give you some time to rest, and Rob will prepare you something to eat."
Draciona rested and then ate a meal with her father and Rob. Though Frederick remained human, he had an unusually large appetite. With the caring concern of a long-lost father, he asked about her life in the castle. Though his tone and manner were light and friendly, there was a shrewdness in his eyes, as if he were watching her far closer than he let on. The following day, Frederick announced,
"I have finished deciding your quest. I will give you 3 tasks, and if you can complete them in a princess-like way, your dragon nature will clear up. Rob will accompany you to take note of your progress and report back to me. Your first task awaits."
Draciona and Rob set out away from the mountains and toward the farms and rolling hills. The balmy wind brought with it the scent of hay and manure. They stopped at a dilapidated barn full of straw. Rob unrolled the scroll and read,
Your first task is to spin straw into gold.
What? That doesn't sound like a princessly task.
That's what it says, and Frederick is very wise. I'm sure he knows best.
Draciona looked at the piles of straw. She had no idea how to spin, as all the spindles in the kingdom had been hidden after some other princess's freak accident with one.
This is impossible. I can't spin without a spindle, and even if there was a spindle, it would take magic to turn straw into gold.
Rob snapped his fingers.
That's it! I'll use magic!
He muttered a few words and the straw turned into gold. Draciona grew very angry. A cloud of smoke puffed out of her nose.
This is my quest, not yours. I have to solve the problem without your help.
When she spoke, fire shot out of her mouth and engulfed Rob's head. Draciona jumped back.
I'm sorry,
Rob blinked back at her. Not a hair on his head was singed.
No worries, I'll simply change the gold back into straw.
And he did.
How is it that my fire didn't harm you?
I am a magician, and I'm a teeny bit dragon myself.
Draciona turned back to the straw.
Well, there is no spindle here, and it would be cheating if I used your magic to make one. How will I spin straw into gold?
Perhaps I may be of service, said a creaky voice. Draciona turned, astonished to see a gnome with sharp teeth rubbing his hands together. I can spin the straw into gold, for a price. For you, my dear, I will do this for the low, low price of your firstborn child. Draciona rolled her eyes.
That isn't a low price at all.
Yes, it is. Usually I charge a trove full of jewels. But a firstborn child, well, you can have another.
That's just despicable. Rob, I haven't had lunch yet, and I'm feeling hungry. Do you think if I ate just one of the man's legs, it would be all right? After all, he has another.
The gnome made a face and slinked away. By now, an idea was forming in Dracula's mind.
Can I turn straw into gold using other methods?
I suppose, but I'll have to revise the wording of the first task.
Rob took out an inkwell and scratched out part of the task and proceeded to write on the scroll. Dracula used a cart to haul the straw back into the mountains. The gnomes and dwarves, renowned for their metalwork, lived in pleasantly warm, smoky caves. With their help, she was able to light a fire with her breath, melt some gold, and dip the straw into it. The molten metal burned the straw away, leaving hollow tubes. The gnomes didn't ask for her firstborn child as payment. They simply asked her to keep their fires going with her breath, and charged the gold to King Rapunzel's open account. Rob scribbled down some notes on the scroll.
Your next task awaits at a barbecue.
It took a few days to find a barbecue, but when they did, Rob announced the royal presence to the merry party, and she was quickly invited. Then he told her her task.
You must sit here and eat only a salad. And because you are a princess, you cannot breathe fire, and if anything goes wrong at the barbecue, you must not help. Remember, you are a helpless maiden.
Dracula could see that this task was going to be more difficult than the last. Though she liked vegetables, refraining from eating meat at a barbecue was exceedingly difficult. Dracula stared at the pig on the spit, her mouth watering.
Perhaps some bacon bits on my salad would be all right?
The chunks of crisp pork happened to be the size of her fist, but Rob said nothing. He simply scratched something on the scroll. When it began to rain, the ladies in their fine clothes wailed about getting wet. Some of the men took out a tent. Dracula said,
That looks like it's gonna fall over. Why don't I just help with...
Ahem,
said Rob.
Oh yes. Why don't I just sit in the corner and bat my eyelashes and act helpless like a princess is supposed to?
Dracula sat in the corner as the men struggled with the tent. Being a princess wasn't easy. When the fire went out due to the rain, the wood was too wet to relight. "Oh, whatever shall we do? My picnic will be ruined if there isn't enough meat to feed my guests," said the host. Dracula glanced at Rob. He was helping himself to a jello salad. She discreetly breathed fire on the wood, causing it to dry and light. "It's a miracle," said the prince. Rob raised an eyebrow. He wrote something down on the parchment. When the barbecue was finished, he read from the scroll.
The last task is to find a prince with some ailment or curse that you can cure by kissing him.
Unfortunately, the prince hosting the barbecue was in perfect health. They traveled all the next day until they came to a swamp that smelled of sulfur. A chorus of ribbits greeted them.
I'm sure you will find a grateful prince here who will be glad to be cured.
Dracula didn't know much about princes or where they liked to spend their free time, but a swamp seemed an unlikely place. As it happened, the swamp was leaping with princes. The first prince they found was a frog because a witch had cast a spell on him, but when Dracula tried to kiss him, he hopped away as fast as he could. The next few princes were the same. Dracula used all of her stealth and muscle to catch the next prince, splattering swamp muck all over herself in the process. He was a toad, figuratively, but otherwise looked normal. "You're a prince? What's wrong with your face? It looks like you have green eczema. Are you supposed to cure me, or am I supposed to cure you? 'Cause if that's the case, it's going to take a whole lot more than one kiss to cure you." Dracula accidentally ate him. She blamed it on her hunger. A salad with bacon bits the day before was hardly enough for a growing young woman. The last prince they found was a toad, literally and figuratively. He was rude and disgusting and green and warty. "Hey, baby, want a big sloppy kiss? Take a look at this tongue action." He caught a fly and ate it.
I prefer being called Dracula to baby.
She said. "Sure, whatever you say, baby. I dig green girls. You want to make out?" He ate another fly. Dracula looked at Rob.
I'll take him away before you accidentally eat him.
Dracula sighed and sat on a lichen-covered log. She didn't think she could blame the witches who cast spells on these princes. She didn't want to kiss any of them. Not that they were exactly lining up to kiss her either. Was she really that dreadful to look at? When Rob returned, he asked,
Shall we hunt this swamp some more or try another swamp?
Are all princes really so horrible? I thought there were some decent ones out there, but apparently not the ones with curses. I want to cure my skin condition, but can't stand the idea of kissing someone with a toad-like personality. And of course, once they see my scales, they definitely don't want to kiss me.
Rob sat down next to her.
There's nothing wrong with dragon scales. They're kind of cute and very useful.
He drew his knife and stabbed her in the arm. Draciona shrieked in surprise. A burst of fire erupted from her mouth and engulfed Rob. He remained unburned. Her arm was unscratched, though Rob's knife was slightly bent.
See how useful that is? And I bet you could survive flames too.
That's very well, but I don't think princesses are usually useful. I've completed my other 2 tasks, more or less. I need to think of a way to accomplish the 3rd, and then I'll look normal.
Well, if it's that important to you, I can make a slight revision to the task, so that it doesn't have to be a prince who you kiss.
Draciona placed her hands on her hips.
And just who do you think would be willing to kiss me in the middle of a swamp?
His cheeks turned pink.
A magician librarian?
Draciona blinked. That was most unexpected. Rob was a bit unusual looking himself with bright green hair, but he was handsome. And more importantly, he didn't have the personality of a toad.
But I have to kiss someone with an ailment or a curse, so I can cure it.
Rob scratched his chin.
Well, I did stub my toe at the barbecue yesterday. Maybe if you kiss me, it will go away. Then you won't fail your test.
That sounded reasonable. She leaned forward and kissed him. And kissed him. And kissed him. She wanted to make sure to cure his stubbed toe after all. Draciona was surprised how pleasant it was. It certainly made her toes tingle.
Is that what it's supposed to be like kissing a prince?
She asked.
I don't know. I've never kissed a prince before.
Rob said. Draciona laughed.
How's your toe?
Completely cured.
He scratched a few notes on the scroll. On their journey back to the cave of Frederick the Dreaded, Draciona couldn't help thinking how refreshing it was to not have to worry about Rob being harmed if flames accidentally shot out of her mouth. And he was helpful and nice, and never complained about her dragon scales. She never had an inclination to eat him either. Rob caught her sneaking furtive glances at her a few times and smiled. Draciona blushed.
Ouch! I think I stubbed my other toe,
said Rob, hopping up and down, holding his foot. A mischievous smile crossed his face.
Maybe you could use your princessly nature to cure it?
Draciona kissed him, not minding at all. When they returned to the cave, Rob handed Frederick the list. Draciona's father looked over the scroll.
I see Rob took the liberty of making a few changes. You cast straw into gold? Interesting interpretation. I see Rob added that the salad could have bacon bits. Fair enough. Your last task was to cure a prince's ailment or curse by kissing him.
There was a long pause. Frederick's gaze flickered to Rob.
I see you had some difficulty finding an adequate prince.
Rob nodded, a sheepish grin on his face.
Well, you did try your best in these endeavors, and it was Rob's judgment that you passed your quest. Though I don't know if I would have been as generous.
Really?
Draciona had been sure Rob had failed her on the first 2 tests.
So my green eczema will go away?
If you can continue your princessly behavior and refrain from letting your dragon half rule your actions, your dragon scales should clear up. Now all we have to do is find a tower to lock you in. And you can wait to be rescued by a prince or a knight who you can reward with a kiss. Then you can be married and live happily ever after. Which means being locked in a castle for the rest of your life, doing nothing other than having children and donning your husband's socks.
Draciona scrunched up her nose. That didn't sound very happily ever after to her.
But why do we need a prince to rescue me? I could rescue myself.
I'm sure you could, but that wouldn't be very princessly.
Draciona didn't like the idea of kissing another prince, even if it was one who didn't look like a frog.
Is there any chance a magician librarian could rescue me, and I could, kiss him instead.
Certainly not. Princesses must be rescued and marry knights or princes, never magician librarians. And you must continue to eat salads, as princesses eat as lightly as birds. Then your dragon scales should completely vanish.
This just kept getting worse and worse.
But I don't want to eat just salads and wait for a prince to rescue me, and I prefer magician librarians to princes, and I really don't want to darn some prince's socks.
But you said you wanted to be rid of your, what did you call it, eczema?
Draciona glanced at Rob.
Rob said my dragon scales are cute.
Rob nodded.
Did he now? Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Frederick gave Rob a meaningful look. He turned back to Draciona.
Well, if you want to be a princess, you must behave as a princess, so your dragon scales will clear up. If you want to be a dreaded dragon, you must read books, learn magic, become wise and useful, spend time with me so I can teach you to change your shape at will, and occasionally go to barbecues and be in charge of the fire when needed. And if anyone annoys you, you can eat them.
That sounds kind of nice, actually.
Frederick winked at her.
Fortunately for dragons, there are also no rules against kissing magician librarians. On occasion.
I was first introduced to this story a few years ago when it was originally published at Flagship Magazine. I was actually a slush reader for them too, and I very much enjoyed it, laughed my head off, and it's still one of my favorite stories that I've heard from that magazine. Originally, when we published it, Serena Dory herself did the audio, which she did a wonderful job, but in my heart, I've always thought that this deserved a full cast treatment, and so I thought that it would be a lot of fun, especially for our 4th anniversary, to do such a treatment. This story is so much fun, and believe it or not, I had a ton of fun working with the kids who only ever been in front of the microphone a couple of times before, so I think they did a great job in my own opinion, and I want to thank them for all their patience and working with me. It was a lot of work for them, especially when I asked them to read the line for the 10th time so that we could get the right inflection and get them right in the front of the microphone and not the noises that you could imagine are in my house. Thank you very much to them. Cast of Wonders relies on your donations to pay our authors and to bring you the best in young adult audio fiction each week. If you've enjoyed this story or any of the others that you've heard, please consider making a donation using the PayPal link on our site. Every one-time and monthly donation helps, and you have our heartfelt thanks. Share your appreciation of this story by leaving us a review on iTunes or sharing the episode with your friends and family. We are Cast of Wonders on Twitter, and come by and say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Wolfsbane Publishing and is brought to you by the creative team of Barry J. Northern, our publisher and author, our audio producer, Alan Sale, our editor, Marguerite Kenner, and I remain, as always, your humble assistant editor and head slush wrangler, Jeff Height. Our episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. That means share it all you want, but don't sell it or change it. Our theme is Appeal to Heavens by Alexi Knob from musicalley.com. And before I say thanks for listening, which I would like to say thanks for listening, I would like to hand off the microphone to Marguerite, who has a special message for you.
Thanks, Jeff. That's right, everyone. July 21st will be Cast of Wonders' 4th anniversary. 4 years of stories that run the entire gambit of audio fiction. From opera wars to valiant stuffed childhood defenders. From giants dreaming of summer to the plains of Mars. Mechanical duelists and space junk salvagers. Teenage shapeshifters on futuristic streets. And supernatural summer camp. 4 years of the best in young adult short fiction, and with much, much more on the horizon. I wish I had an exciting announcement to make, but all our scrambling behind the scenes isn't quite ready to debut yet. The crew has grown in size these last few months, with 2 new audio producers bringing you their talents and a half dozen new foragers for diamonds in our slush pile coal. We're preparing an artistic facelift on the website to match with our upcoming Patreon page. We'll have lots of fun thank yous for our donors, including postcards and even a monthly YA book club. Once we're up and running, you, our loyal listeners, will be the first to know. So thank you to all of our listeners, authors, narrators, and fans. Thank you for supporting audio short fiction and stereotype-shattering YA. And as always, thanks for listening.